Welcome to chapter 54. We are Kim and Nadine, and together we embark on journeys through the realms of our favourite books. No book count competition here, just pure enjoyment and candid conversations about worlds, characters, and emotions that whisk us away from reality.
Join us for unfiltered reviews, current reads, and a celebration of magic that words weave. Welcome to the haven for book enthusiasts who crave connection and a like-minded community.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first podcast from Kim and I, where we talk about books. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about why this podcast is called Chapter 54. And we're going to talk about how we got back into reading. And I'm saying back into reading because for my part, I love reading since I was a child, but I stopped for quite a while. And I think it was similar to you, Kim. But yeah, let's dive right in. Why did you start reading again? And why is this podcast called Chapter 54?
Well, I was very much like you. I always read when I was younger, and I was always into like the witchy books, the fantasy books, and then when I was doing like my exams at school, I just stopped reading altogether, and I had my teenage life. And then when the boom of 50 Shades of Grey came out, I jumped on the bandwagon of 50 Shades of Grey, and then it dove me back into reading again. And then that's all I did was just read. And then I had my children, and I had like an 8-year long break of reading. And then it wasn't until I picked up the ACOTAR series that I got back into reading again. So, yeah.
And that was, when was that when you picked up ACOTAR last September?
Well, actually, I bought it during COVID, and I always every weekend I don't know if it's an ADHD thing, but every weekend I was like, I'm going to start my book series. And me and my husband would sit and watch Netflix, and I'd be like, oh my god, there's nothing on. I'm going to read, and it never happened. So it actually sat in my Kindle library for a year and a half before I actually picked it up. And last November, when I was traveling to the UK, I thought I've got to read on the plane because I was alone. So I picked up the first ACOTAR book, and then that was it. I was hooked. I don't think I spoke to any family in the UK. Just integrated into the first ACOTAR book.
And what's funny about that is because I started it at the same time, but we both didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped reading once I went back to university because you had to read anyway for that. And then I was very much into self-help and spirituality. So I would only read books about that. And then at one point I felt like by now I can write my own self-help book. I've read so many. So I stopped completely. And then my husband went away on a business trip, and I was like, I've seen everything on Netflix. It's way too nice weather here. So let me pick up a book. And that one, by then, I didn't even know what Book Talk was. So I was just like seeing this on Amazon with like really good reviews. So I got the first one, started reading it, and I didn't like love it as in like, oh my god, this is the best book I've ever read, but I thought like, yeah, it's kind of all right. And then my husband came back, and we went right away on another trip, and I was like, well, now I kind of, because it ended on a cliffhanger, so I was like, well, I kind of now need to get like the second book, which I got at the airport. And then I was like reading through the whole plane journey, and I'm terrified of flying. I didn't even realize we were flying. And up until I think 2 a.m. at night is when I then was at chapter 54. And when I read it, I was like crying and laughing. And I was like, oh my God, this is the best chapter I've ever read in my whole life. And I think only like a month later, we were starting to talk about books and realized, oh, we both love the books. And then we were hooked.
I remember reading the book and just thinking, who can I talk to about this book?
Yes.
Because like you, I didn't know there was a book talk. I didn't know there was a fandom. I didn't know there was any like book art out there. And I was like, who can I talk to about this book? And I was the same with the first book. I saw it was kind of an alignment with these books. I remember being in the airport well before I actually bought them on my Kindle and just looking through the book section and like, oh, there's these books. The front cover looks kind of good. I
Yeah.
need a fantasy series because it's kind of my thing. So I kind of did the reviews and I thought, okay, maybe I'll buy it. And then I got a voucher for Amazon. I was like, okay, let's just buy a book series. And it ended up being that one. Um, but yeah, I remember reading the first book and being like, oh, it's a bit Beauty and Beastie. And if
Right?
he's going to be like, this is literally like an adult Beauty and the Beast. And I love Beauty and the Beast, but I'm like, And I was like, if he's going to be the main character, he wasn't my cup of tea from like chapter one. I was like, absolutely no way. If he's going to be the main character, I don't think I can read this whole series of books.
Really?
But and then when Reese came and said, I've been looking for you. There you are, I've been looking for you. I was like, okay, something's going to happen. So let's move on to the next one. And then when I got to that chapter 54, I was like, I have nobody to talk to about this chapter.
Yes.
Who can I talk to? So then I was like, frantically on Instagram looking for some fan art, searching who the author was. And then it was the next day when you messaged me on Slack, like, oh my God, we follow the same author. And I was like, oh my God,
That's what
have
I
you read the books? We're like, yes, oh my God. So yeah.
True. That's how I found out when I saw you follow Sarah J. Maas on Instagram. I was like, oh my God, another person who's seen this. And it's funny that you say that because I actually didn't think that of Tamlin. Like, I just thought, like, so that's the male character in the first book. I didn't think he was like bad, but I didn't think he was amazing either. It didn't give me anything. I thought like there were a few romantic scenes, but it wasn't like that. I felt like, oh my God, this is great.
He
And
gave
then
me the ick
only in the
from like day one. Oh
only in the
no.
second book, I never even thought about like. I think because I wasn't into book talk or had no expectation or anything at all, and I haven't read a book in such a long time that I felt the author gave like little hints in one book that then like um, you see in the second or third book, oh, that's when he meant that. And that's what I love about this series is that to me, the author, it's very rare that someone writes something and you wouldn't think, usually I can already tell, oh, now I already know this is going to happen or they're going to get together or this is going to happen. With this book, I had absolutely no idea what was going to happen. I had no idea this is turning out like that. And then it turned out to be so beautiful. And I actually have one question for you prepared already because, and everybody who hasn't read the book yet, like, I think we will give spoilers in the podcast. Otherwise, it's a bit boring. So you might want to read the books first. So my question for you is, in the first book, obviously Tamlin is the main character. And then after you've been on Book Talk as well, you know that he gets a lot of hate. Like there's like this really bad nickname for him as well, and people are hating on him constantly. And then there's this other smaller group that is like justice for Tamlin. So I want to know which camp you are in and why.
Um, I'm probably going to annoy you with my answer. I'm, I'm on the fence because if I put myself in that world,
Yeah.
I'm like hating on Tamlin. Like he gave me the ick from day one. He's really not my type, and I think maybe I didn't connect with him because he's not
Mm.
my type. So
Yeah.
like the long male blonde hair,
Yeah.
like the Legolas thing. Like if we go back to Lord
Right.
of the Rings, like I wasn't into Legolas.
Yeah.
Everybody fancied Legolas the elf, and I was like
Mm.
Strider, the rough guy on the horse with the scraggly dark hair. So Tamlin to me is like Legolas, and I'm just like from day one I was like, he's not my cup of tea, but okay, he's the main character. Let's roll with it. So inside the book, I'm like, let's hate Tamlin. But if you come out of the book into the real world, is he not like? And this is going might be really controversial. Is he not like most men?
Probably. No,
Like, is he
I
just
would.
not maybe like a normal? I mean, did he really do anything so bad? Yes, he did. Okay, he locked her in the house and he did these things, but in a way, that was his way of protecting her. So if
Right.
you look at it from Tamlin's view, he did love her, obviously not as much as Reese. He was protecting her, so he kind of was doing the right thing by her. He just went the wrong way about it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm on the fence. I'm like, I don't hate him. He gives me the ick.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be the person I would choose out if they were all stood up in a long line. He would be at the bottom pick. But can I hate him? I don't think I hate him. I think he gets a lot of stick that he doesn't need to get because he
Yeah.
did kind of redeem himself a little bit in the end, didn't
Right.
he?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of on the fence. How
I
about
mean,
you?
I'm justice for Chamberlain because while it's not my type, etc., if now that you've seen all these other books that I've read, I love like morally gray male character, and that's funny. On Book Talk, most of those characters, the male characters, are morally gray, and they lock her up to like protect her, and they go out there and touch her, or you know, and in for him, like he made mistakes, of course, but like I felt like I've seen worse happening since when people are still raving about it. So I'm like, I feel he should get justice because I feel he didn't do that bad. And I think personally, I think it's not finished yet with his story, but maybe I'm wrong. I think that he's maybe going to have a comeback. But yeah, that was like, I think one of the biggest controversies I find around these books is around Templin.
But I think it's the same in Tog, isn't it? With I can never say his name. Kale.
I can't say his name either. I thought it was
Kale.
Cole. Clearly not.
Kale. It's the same with him. Like in the beginning, like as you know, I loved him, and then
Yes.
you kind of fall out of love with him. But if you take yourself out of the story, actually, morally, he was correct.
Yeah. I mean,
Like
he got so much
I
hate.
hate, I
One,
hate him. Like I still can't hate him. Like if I'm
no.
when I'm in the book, I'm like, Cole, Kale, Cole. But if I take myself out of the book and look at it as like this as a reality,
Yeah.
I mean, he's probably the only character in the whole book which is morally correct. Like he's
Yeah.
right though.
We love like morally incorrect or morally right. That's what makes it
But then
interesting.
again, when I'm in that world, I'm out of this world, so I don't want to be morally correct.
Yeah.
I want to be unhinged.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know your favorite character is definitely unhinged. So I have one other question for you because so for those who've read it, everybody basically got their story apart from Azriel and Elaine, right?
Mhm.
So the question is, do you want Azriel and Elaine to end up together, or who do you want to like end up together?
Do you know what? This is going to be really controversial as well. I did not connect because I'm on Book Talk watching everybody like flews over Asriel, and I didn't connect with his character at all.
Hmm.
Like I really like Reese, obviously who doesn't.
Yeah.
I really like Cassian. So if Reese and Cassian was in a room, I don't know who I would go to. But Asriel is just I don't know. It just reminds me of this young skater type emo.
Skater.
Yeah, skater emo dude that was kind of like all the guys I hated in high school. And I'm like, I don't hate him, but I didn't connect with him. So I'm like, am I excited to hear about his and Elaine's story?
What do you think it's
I
going to be
don't know.
his and Elaine's story, though?
I think it might start off like that, but then we can't forget Lucian. And I see everybody raving on Book Talk about Asriel and Elaine, but Elaine is Lucian's mate, right?
Yeah. She did
So,
say, though, in a one interview that it is possible you can have two mates.
yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw that, and I don't know if she remembers that, but that's what she said in an interview. But so to me, because as you know, I'm into all conspiracy stuff. There's been like a lot of hints about Spring Court lately on Instagram, on her Instagram, and on other stuff. So obviously, Lucian would have been on Spring Court, but then again, that's not his original court. I think it would be too obvious, and I think that there's like no connection that would have to be like built up massively. There were like so many books without any connection. So
Mhm.
then the other question would have been, is it Asriel and Gwyn? And then the real controversy that I saw in Book Talk is, could it be could it be Tamlin and Elaine?
Oh no.
No.
Poor Elaine.
But what if he's completely, so that's the thing, like Reese and Feyre, they were mates, right?
Mhm.
But Tamlin and Feyre weren't, so he was already romantic with her in his own funny way, but
Mhm.
maybe he's completely different when it's his
Maybe.
mate.
Maybe.
You wouldn't love it, I can tell.
No. I really like it when the book's like really unexpected, and I think I would feel really flat if Tamlin came back in it and took one of the main characters.
That would be really unexpected.
I'd be like, oh,
I would, but I think a lot of people would say Asriel and Gwyn would be cool.
yeah.
But to me, honestly, I'm boring. I just do Asriel and Elaine. Let's just knock it off the script. Like,
But yeah, because she could do like a full-on love triangle.
yeah,
That would
which was already like, I think, a
be
little bit hinted in the Nest
building up.
book could have been. No, I think I just want like a normal romantic. Like, let's just get Asriel and Elaine together. But actually, we never even asked or answered the question, why is it chapter 54? Because, in my opinion, up until this chapter, there were things happening and it was just a normal storyline, and then in this chapter he's basically confessing his love to her, but he also explains every single action he ever did in book 1 and in book 2 and how it all tied together, and then you realize simple sentences like
Hmm.
"there you are, have been looking for you," which you just think is a normal sentence,
Hmm.
all comes together, and then you realize, oh my god, he's done all of these great things just for her, and he would do all of these great things just for her. That's why this chapter is so amazing. Or am I wrong?
No, it's still one of the best chapters, and I can
Yes.
reread that chapter every day and still get excited by it. And you know what? When I finished the whole series, I was like everybody else, I could read that again. And I wanted to read it again just to have the experience, but then I actually read it again straight away. I didn't even wait.
Yeah.
I just went back and read the first three books again. But knowing what you know after that chapter, it was a completely different experience.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd be rereading it, but I wasn't, because then you start to get the hints
Yes.
and the little bits that you didn't miss, but you missed and didn't
Yeah.
realize how important they were. And the rereading it again it wasn't like rereading the book. It was a completely different experience, and I enjoyed it the second time just as much as I did the first time, but in a completely different way. It was so good. I
So
remember sitting there, my husband's looking at me, and I was like, "Oh my god,
true.
oh my god, oh yeah, oh my god!" And my husband's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yes, leave me alone."
That's what I hate. Like, what I love, like, a book can literally draw you in, and you're in that world, right? And then, like, my
Mhm.
husband randomly thinks, "Do you think the potatoes are ready?" And you're like, "Oh my god!" Like,
Exactly,
but
exactly.
yeah, I agree. I mean, I reread it several times, but then I also did the graphic audio. Even though I don't like audiobooks, the graphic audio I actually really enjoyed. I liked that. You still have to do. You still
Yeah,
have to do
so,
that. I
so
want to.
next time I decide I'm going to reread it, I'm going to do the
Yes,
graphic audio.
yes, you're gonna do the graphic
I
audio.
nearly did the whole of Tog on Audible though,
You
just
have to
because I
explain
couldn't
what
read it.
talk is for people who are new.
Throne of Glass,
Yes,
second series
yes.
of Sarah J. Maas collection. So the Throne of Glass series, I read most of it on audible, because I just struggled to read it. But I think that's another podcast. So
That's another point.
everybody hold yourself to be a whole other podcast on the Throne of Glass. But I've got a question for you.
Yes,
So, what did you think about the end? So, after Cassian and Nesta's book was
yes.
obviously the end of the series. But what? Because I was speaking to my mom about this, and we both have different. We have the same opinion.
Mm.
Interested in your opinion, so I'm going to ask you: what did you think to the end of the series? That final chapter where she was giving birth, when it was so like for me, the whole book was like Hunger Games. It was exciting. It was
Yeah,
like fast paced. There was all different things happening. I kind of missed like Feyre and Reese a little bit,
yeah.
but then at the end, I don't know. What did you think about the end after the whole book?
Mm. So what I felt, and I saw that somewhere on TikTok as well, is like once Farah got pregnant, I felt like her whole character became so different. Like before, she was like growing into this person and becoming strong, independent woman, yet like still independent, yet still the mate of Reese, and they were like such a power couple. And then she became like way more like I don't know, like she wasn't really in the center anymore, but not just because she wasn't part of the book, like her whole personality became like a little mouse almost.
Hmm.
And then it ended with that. And I just felt like it wasn't, the story wasn't finished, or it was just like almost randomly put in there. Now suddenly, okay, here here you go, now this also happened.
Hmm.
So to me there was always like, it's, even though it ended, it still was like a cliffhanger to me, because it still felt like, well, isn't there something else going to come? But yeah, I didn't have strong feelings about it, to be honest. So to answer your question, it was finished, but I didn't have like any strong feelings about it. Well, what was your
I just
thought?
felt really flat at the end
Yeah, flat could be a good word.
because that whole series just captivated everything. I couldn't put it down. Even when I did put it down, I was
Yeah.
constantly thinking about this series. It became an
Yes.
obsession. When I wasn't cooking and thinking about it, I was on BookTok trying to find memes and different fan things. And then it was really strange to read Cassian. And in the beginning, I was a bit like, do I like this Cassian and Nesta book? I was kind of missing Reese and Feyre's characters being the main thing a little
Yes, me
bit. But then I
too.
really got into the book and I actually really loved it. It was like very Hunger Gamey and it was really good. And then at the end, they just kind of like, it was a very strange end chapter. Just 1 minute, they're like on this mountain and nearly died and all these things are happening. And then next minute they're in the bedroom and she's giving birth, and it was just really quick. I
Yes.
think that chapter should have been a really huge part of the book because
Mm,
she was like, how's she going to give birth to this baby, and she was pregnant. You didn't really see the pregnancy and things like that, and then it just kind of in a few pages ended. I think
yeah.
it should have had more, and at the end I was a bit like, and when I asked my mum about it, and she thinks exactly the same thing, she was like, yeah, it should have been a whole.
A longer part.
It shouldn't have just been. It felt like she just stuffed it on the end of Nesta and
Yeah,
Cassian's book. I think it needed more of a place in
fair
the
point.
series. So when I ended it, I was a bit like, a bit flat. I
That's
expected this
true.
really big ending, and it kind of like, so, it should have been a big ending, but it didn't feel like it was. It
But
was,
what would have been like, just you just wanted like more, or would have been, what would have been your
yeah,
perfect
I think
ending
it
then?
was a really big part of Reese's and Feyre's story, and it was a really big part of the story going through the whole book as well about how is she going to give birth, and he was protecting her and didn't tell her, and it just felt like that whole thing was in the background,
Mm-hmm.
and then at the end it was just stuck on the end of the book that she just gave birth, she died, but she didn't, and then she come back to life and blah. It was kind of like a blasé type thing. I think it deserved its own. I don't know, like
Yeah,
novella or something. It just deserved its own part of the book rather than being stuffed on the end in one chapter. I don't know.
fair
I don't
point.
know. I just felt a bit flat.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And I'm interested to see like how that will play out in the next book,
Mm.
because now they have a child, and I don't know, like I wanted more of them being not
Mhm.
having a child. It sounds really mean, but like I
Well,
want,
I'm a mum of three, but when you watch when me and my husband are going through Netflix, and
yeah.
like for example, there's that movie Bird Box. I refuse to watch it because she's got kids. Kids ruin things in movies, right? Like they don't stay quiet when they're supposed to be quiet. And when they're fighting wars, the kids disappeared. Like we were watching The Walking Dead last night, and again, there's a kid. I don't know if you've seen The Walking Dead. There's a
No.
kid in The Walking Dead that was told to stay under the car and be quiet, and she didn't. She ran and attracted all these zombies. And I'm like, kids in movies and books ruin things. So I'm like, even though I'm a mum, I'm like, I don't want to watch a movie that involves kids because they don't stay quiet. They don't do as they're told. and, they cause stress and anxiety even in a movie. So I'm like,
True.
I don't know. Like, oh, I don't know how I feel. But now they've got a baby that makes,
I
I don't
know. I just feel like the
know.
dynamic is going to be so different, and I felt like her
Yeah.
character still had like so much room to grow, and like
Mm.
being the queen and everything of that like whole, or high lady. Yeah, but it's not my book to write. I still love it. Obviously, still like the best series out there.
Absolutely.
Um, so yeah, that's my thoughts on this book, the best series out there, and obviously this one, the best book I've read. Even though I love many other books, nothing came. Oh, that's not true. One book came close, Not as close. I would still say this is still my favorite, and we get to talk about it in another episode for sure. Maybe people can guess which book it is.
And let
Um,
us know in the comments.
and you think the same, right? Like it's
Yeah,
close, but
it's
this
very
is still
close.
better.
It's different, but
Yes.
close. Because it's different, I think.
And also,
It's
I
very
will
close.
say the main character, the male, the MMC, is very morally gray in the other book
Yeah, absolutely.
and says things that you wouldn't necessarily give, like Tamlin, you would hate on him if he would say
Yeah.
that, but then for him, you're like, oh my god, this is so romantic.
I have to stop comparing books to ACOTAR now.
I know.
So I kind of, everybody's like, ACOTAR is my Roman Empire. I'm like, no, I put ACOTAR above my head, and they are the Bibles. Like, they're the Bibles. So then everything underneath, then so they're the top. Like, you were not. I'm yet to find something topping that. Like, my mum's been reading for like 40 odd years, and she says she's read nearly every book in the world, and she still says it's still one of the top series she's ever read in
Right.
40 odd years. So they are the Bibles, and then we can go down to Roman empires because I don't think we're ever gonna. So I still have my Roman empires, and the book we're talking about now for the next episode is probably my Roman Empire at the moment, but ACOTAR are the Bibles. So I think we have to
Oh,
separate them. Otherwise, at the minute, nothing can compare, I don't
I love how you said that.
think.
And honestly, I feel that's like the perfect ending for this podcast episode. I think that sums it up for us.
Yeah.
So let us know on social how you feel about these series and about chapter 54. Thank you so much for listening, and see you in the next episode.
As we close the page on this episode, thank you for joining us on today's journey and being a part of our little world. If you enjoyed our unfiltered discussions and the enchanting realms we explored, don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts with us.
Let's keep the conversation alive by joining us over on TikTok. Until then, may your reading be as magical as the worlds we adore.